Hi, my name is Cassondra Moore, and I am a librarian for Seneca Middle School in Oconee County. And I am a proud member of the SCEA. I love the way that it's teacher centered, student centered, teacher led. And so I appreciate this opportunity to talk about inclusion today. Most of the time, when people think about inclusion, they think about racial diversity, which is a huge part of inclusion. I'm not saying that. But another part of inclusion is inclusion of all the different learning styles and brain processes. And something that I'm very passionate about um, is the focus on or the inclusion of neurodivergent students and teachers. I'm passionate about that because I am neurodivergent. I am ADHD, and I've had to learn as an adult how to make that work for me. But I recognize that there are so many students who don't know how to make that work for them. They don't see it as anything that is a positive because too often when they are diagnosed with ADHD, they feel like that's, something wrong with them, and it's really not. And I don't like the term of a learning disability. I think it's just a learning difference. It's a different way that people process information and the way that different people respond to the world. And so I first really became interested in neurodivergency several years ago, about 2008. I got my master's in divergent learning. And, I was getting my master's, and it was a phenomenal program at Columbia College. It was a wonderful program, and it was so applicable to what I was doing in the classroom. And I remember just leaving class and implementing some of those practices into the classroom. But it was such a good program for me because I could see myself in that program. I thought, oh my goodness, I did not know that this is what this was called. I just grew up thinking I was weird. I thought I was a weird, child. I became a weird adult. I mean, when I took those classes and realized that there's just different ways that people learn, and it's not a bad thing, it's just a different thing, that was so refreshing to me. And, I could kind of think back to when I was in middle school and even in high school that I did not have any books. I didn't have anything that I could read where I felt like, oh, that's me. Okay, that's how school is for me. And so it's really become something that I'm very passionate about. I really want to go out and make sure that my students, the students that I serve, feel like they are seen and to kind of see themselves as valuable and acceptable just the way that they are. And one of those ways is to put books in the hands of students who need to know that, okay, yes, the way that you function in the world, it is a little different, but that's not bad. That you're not the only one, which is so important in middle school, to not feel like you're the only one going through something. And again, I feel like that this is something that teachers need to even understand because teachers can be neurodivergent too. I know, like I said, I once I realized that that was what it was, and that it just wasn't me being unfocused and it wasn't me doing all these things, I was able to structure my classroom in such a way that I could better serve my students and still feel like I was accomplishing what I needed to accomplish. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about. I want to talk about some of the books that are available to students. And I'm coming from a middle school background. So please excuse me if you're, elementary or higher, send me some books. I would love to have access to those books as well. But one book is Focused, and it's by Alison Gerber. And it is the story of a girl with ADD and how she has a hard time concentrating. And it's just such a good story. It's just real. Oh my goodness. I read this and I thought my middle school heart would have been so happy to have read this book and to know that I wasn't the only one and that there are other people who struggle with, with attention and focusing. This book, Tornado Brain, is just really fantastic. I love this book, and I know that you and that's something that I do. I love books, but this one is a really neurodivergent character. She struggles with attention, she struggles with being touched, she struggles with communication, she struggles with a lot of things, and then she has this sister who does not. And it's just how this friend group that she was in, how it kind of came apart, but how she's struggling with her neurodiversity, even in the friendship and in her peer relationship. A fantastic book that any student who who just finds themselves just a little different would appreciate. And it's also good insight for teachers. Both of these books, great insight for teachers. If you have students who are identified as ADHD, neurodivergent, autism spectrum, these books would really give you some good insight. Another book is Out of My Mind. I read this book years ago, and I was just really touched by it because it's the girl in the story is nonverbal, and I'm going to touch on that in a minute. But it's just how people so underestimated her, and didn't think that she was smart, and she turns out to be brilliant. If you have not read Sharon Draper's Out of My Mind, you definitely need to read this, not only for students who are nonverbal, but just students in general. It's we've got to be careful about labeling students to, and saying, oh, this student's this way, oh, this student's, this way, just because of what we perceive. We need to get to know our students, and every student deserves to be known and to be accepted. Um, and by their teachers, by their school, by their peers. This is a fantastic book for that. And the last book that I want to touch on, and I'll probably spend the most time with this, is Real, by Carol Kujic and Peyton Goddard. And I had the privilege of reaching out to them and talking to Peyton Goddard, who serves as the inspiration for this story. And she says, nonverbal does not mean non-feeling. And that just punched me. I thought, wow, you're absolutely right. Nonverbal does not mean non-feeling. Nonverbal does not mean non-thinking. And something that I took away from this book is when I became the librarian at my school, we have a classroom, and a self-contained class of students who are nonverbal. And I have made it a point to go into their classroom weekly. And sometimes I miss a week, but for the most part, I try to get in there weekly and just communicate with them, just to be in their space, to get to know them. And you know what? I found they have such personalities. They really do. Their demeanor, their facial expressions, their little they it's such a joy for me. I am so glad that I read this book and then decided to take action to be a part of those students' lives. Because it so enriches me, and it always keeps me on the lookout for ways that I can connect with other students. Um, Coming out of this pandemic, we have kids who are just processing the world differently. And some are doing great, but some are not. And some are, it's just a different way. The anxiety, the lack of focus, even with our teachers, even with, you know, dealing with parents. I think it's important for us to recognize that it's not a disability, that it's a difference. And it's just the way that they process the world around them. And I think that it's important that we advocate for these students. We advocate for teachers who may be neurodivergent. Um, like I said, I'm ADHD, and I've learned to make that work for me. But this is my 19th year in education. And I know that those first few years in education, when I would start this and then go to this and go to this, I just felt like so flighty. And it took me understanding what was going on within me to figure out a way to make things work for my students and for myself. And so I think when we are talking about inclusion, we need to make sure that we are including those neurodivergent learners and teachers and members of our school community into that conversation, because they do need to be included in what's going on. And there's different ways that that will look, but that is an important part of that is an important part of learning. That's an important part of making sure everyone has a seat at the table. So those are a couple of books to help you on your discovery of including neurodivergent text. There's so many more. There's about 20 more that I can talk about. If you're interested, send me a message. I'll be happy to send a list to you. I'd love for you to add to my list. Together, let's really include everybody and make them feel that they are important and that they are valuable, because they are. Thank you.